Hey everyone, it's Nikola Vojinovic here. I'm the founder and CEO of Frame, and I have here with me Justin Boitano, VP of Marketing at Frame. And we also have Jeff Herr from Panzura, and we'll be starting this webinar momentarily. Justin and I are based in San Mateo, California, and we're going to tell you about Frame and how it works together with Panzura to run your applications directly from the cloud and how to access your Panzura storage from anywhere. And Jeff, I don't know if you wanted just to make a quick intro from your side.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Nikito. My name is Jeff Herr. I'm VP of Sales at Panzura, and we're based out of Campbell, California, and we're glad to be here for the webinar.
Great. So I just shared my screen, and I hope everyone can see it. So as I said, we're going to be talking about Frame, how it works together with Panzura, and how it allows you to run any software from the cloud delivered in your browser. So answering the first question, why Frame and Panzura, and why we think this is a great partnership. When many of you have already been using Panzura or know what Panzura is, it's a globally locking file system that backs up all your data centrally in the cloud. So there is a central cloud repository of your data in the cloud. And Panzura has a great technology that allows you to really have a virtual controller and access to your files from the cloud. Now, once you have your data in the cloud, it makes sense to have your applications in the cloud as well, and that's what Frame does. We've been working really hard to build a global platform that lets you seamlessly run apps in the cloud and access your cloud data. And that way, you can think about the full virtualization of everything that you otherwise would have at the office. Your workstations are now virtual workstations running on Frame. They run applications, same applications that you know and use in your daily workflow. And then your physical Panzura appliance becomes a virtual Panzura appliance that seamlessly work with your virtual workstation. So you can have a great virtual office environment for access from anywhere in the world. This obviously allows you to expand set of use cases from a typical office work, so your employees can now work from outside the office and get access securely to their files and all their applications. This allows you also to spin up a number of remote offices without worrying about infrastructure. It provides you device independence, so you can now run from devices that otherwise don't run the applications that you use in your daily work. For example, if you use Revit, that runs only on Windows PC, doesn't run on Mac. So you can now use those applications on different devices and access your Panzura storage from an iPad or even smartphone. In case there is something wrong with your data center that you're using today, or there is something going on and you want to have a disaster recovery solution, you can get that really easily. And finally, as you're adding people to the project, you don't really have to spend a lot of time thinking about sizing the project and spending a lot of money up front. So we take advantage of the elasticity of the clouds and allow you to do all of these things really easily and seamlessly. So with that, Frame is really the global secure cloud platform that lets organizations like yours deliver great experiences and workflows to users on all devices. As long as you're connected to the internet, your workstation, virtual workstation in the cloud should be available at all times. You don't have to install anything on your computer. Everything runs through a browser the same way you run Salesforce or Workday or any other SaaS product. You open a browser, you log in, and you just use your software. And we're gonna give you a demo later on, both on how Frame works together with Panzura, and also how you can run applications like AutoCAD and Revit and Office in the cloud environment. And the concept is really simple. It's been around for a number of decades, where applications run remotely in the cloud, and all that's sent down to a computer, to your local device, are pixels, and then your user input, keyboard, and mouse events are sent back to the server. We obviously perfected this to minimize latency and to provide the best possible user experience. And we've been doing this since 2012, so we are a 4-year-old company based here in San Mateo, California, with 40 people across a couple of main campuses, like here in California, one in Serbia. And we are working with Tier 1 VCs here in the Valley, including Columbus Nova Technology Partners and Bain Capital Ventures. Our last financing round was last summer, $10 million. So we're well funded with great backers, great supporters, and expanding into for us, opportunities like AEC market, and running a number of applications for top manufacturing firms, also design firms and architecture companies from the cloud. And just last month, Gartner recognized us as a cool vendor in endpoint computing for 2016. I already said that we are expanding into new opportunities like AC and running this for design firms. We've already been working for the past couple of years with all major software vendors, and we count as our customers pretty much 10 out of 10 top software vendors in industries like AC and CAD and simulation and design. So from Adobe, Autodesk, that I'm pretty sure, among the audience here, a lot of people use both Adobe and Autodesk, SolidWorks, Siemens, PTC, and a number of others. Their pick for moving applications to the cloud is Frame, and all the benefits of optimized solution that we built for these guys is what you will also get if you decide to use Frame to run AutoCAD, Revit, or Adobe applications, or any of these other applications from the vendors we're working with. Obviously, there are no limits to what applications you can run, so even if a vendor is not our partner, those applications will run just fine, but it's always great to run on a platform that's even further optimized for these applications. We delivered more than 2 million production hours, I think getting closer to 3 million production hours. So the platform has been in production for about 2 years now, and it's growing rapidly. 2016 we see 2016 as a really inflection point for the adoption of apps running from the cloud, and for the beginning of this transition from VDI that people have used in the past, and due to complexities, price, and sometimes even performance, it really didn't catch fire the way many people expected it to do. But we believe that right now, by allowing a much simpler workflow, better economics, and literally global access without any major capital investment, that Frame as a cloud platform will very quickly replace a number of VDI installations. That we have a precedent there that in 2000 in 2008, 2009, a lot of storage that people have used in the FTP environment, moved to Dropbox, and obviously to a more sophisticated solutions like Panzura in the vertical environments. And we just ran a quick poll here. If you go down to your taskbar in your Zoom client, you should be able to see Q&A section. And we ask you a couple of questions. One is if you have considered using VDI in your organization. if you evaluated it, and then the second one is, are you using VDI today? So we are seeing in real time here, pretty much everybody so far, 12 out of 12, considered using VDI, and about 2/3, 9 out of 13 right now, have implemented VDI and are using it today. And I assume it's one of the popular solutions like Citrix, potentially VMware. I think those are the two that can deliver solutions for the graphic workflows that I assume most of you are running. But there's this convergence of both infrastructure and technology and browser advancement and networks that is allowing us to, finally, starting this year and definitely accelerating moving forward, deliver apps from the cloud in a way that surpasses both in terms of performance and in terms of economics. It surpasses VDI. And it's a fairly a simple argument that we've been making, and it really resonated with a lot of our customers who, in an on-prem VDI environment, really had to spend a lot of time buying servers, figuring out what are the vendors that they need to manage, both from the hardware side, networking side, and then remoting stack. And the solutions are really complicated and complex most of the time, and it takes anywhere from a couple of months to a couple of quarters to really get to an environment that can deliver for you. And as opposed to that, if you decide to go with Frame that runs in the public cloud with obviously very, very strong security consideration, you get all the benefits from the cloud elasticity. You pay only for what you use. You have to deal most of the time only with one vendor, that's Frame, and through us you can get your infrastructure for compute and networking and firewalls and all of that. It's really dramatically simplified. Again, compare the workload required to manage your Exchange server versus workload compared to manage your Gmail. It's dramatically simplified, so you don't need a year-long administrative course to manage your VDI. And finally, because everything is elastic, you can create new seats and turn them back in literally minutes. So many advantages of running apps in the cloud versus data center and end-user computing. That means running Windows applications in the cloud. It's basically just following the trend that we've been seeing in the past 10 years. Since the advent of the cloud with AWS, and now expanding to offering from Microsoft, IBM. So most of our stuff, most of the Frame installations are really on Amazon today. We can run on other clouds as well. So if you have any considerations and have already started playing with the clouds and have some workloads running in the cloud on other clouds, we can accommodate that as well. And just to expand a little bit on why it's so great to run things in the cloud as opposed to VDI that I understand a number of you are using today. Well, number one, because the cloud's elastic, Frame offers you a really agile way to run applications in the clouds and follow and take advantage of that elasticity and to minimize your costs. Based on either weekly usage pattern or annual usage pattern. So on the left here, I have a typical weekly usage pattern at a customer site where when you're running VDI, you typically pay for and provision for your peak workloads. So that would be, and apologies, slides skipped a little bit ahead. So you would be paying for the purple line here. That means whether people are using it or not, you had to provision your hardware and provision software, and you're paying for all of that. And in the real world, what happens is like people and users that are represented in red here, they really come and go. Come in the morning. The peak hours are typically between 9 and 12 in the morning, and then during the day they drop off, and that happens Monday through Friday. And then on weekends, the workload is even lower. Some people might be working remotely. And because Frame is elastic and it's taking advantage of cloud elasticity, you only have to pay for what's in blue here, which means that we will only fire up the number of systems and virtual machines that's required at any given time. So everything that's in between this purple line and the blue line are your savings, because you don't have to pay for VM spinning during that time. And shifting from the weekly use pattern to annual usage pattern, that's another advantage that you get in the cloud, where maybe there is a large project that takes 5 or 6 months, and during that time you need more resources. It's really easy to get that and really return them back once you're done, which is not something that you typically can do in a VDI environment, where your scope and initial buy is there to cover you for the next 3 to 5 years, and you're stuck with what you bought, and that's typically provisioned for the peak usage. Another instant advantage is that Frame is global, so you can spin up virtual office literally anywhere in the world in a matter of minutes. We are showing here locations from our AWS installations and data centers. But on top of it, we can run on Microsoft Azure and on IBM SoftLayer Cloud. So it's literally any clouds, infrastructure, hypervisor agnostic, so all the things that you had to maybe think about it when you were implementing your VDI, or you had consultants implementing your VDI. What hypervisor do I choose? Do I run VMware? Do I run Zen? Do I run something else? That's really irrelevant here. And you get the single pane of glass for all your resources, whether they are in North America, but also in Asia, in Europe, in South America. And this is all built in. You can get going literally within minutes. And then I think the third critical advantage is that Frame, unlike some of the VDI solutions that are very general and horizontal, and what they give you at the end of the day is another virtual desktop. We worked very, very hard, both with software partners, storage partners, and then with customers like you, to understand how the workflows look like and to support them. So from the applications on the top, we not only optimize the platform for many of these apps, we also certify the platform for AutoCAD and Revit. We work closely with storage partners like Panzura to seamlessly connect Panzura Cloud Storage with Frame Cloud Workstations. We have very easy way for you to tap into your licenses that are sitting at your office or in your data center. And we have great virtual workstations. A couple of system configs are what we call Pro 16 gig and Pro 64 gig. That give you great and then insane option for running your workloads with fast and large SSDs to support your large applications and files. And finally, we built tremendous expertise in providing solutions in the EAC vertical. So our goal is really to enable cloud transition. We heard from so many people in this space. As they're looking to expand, they're looking to be more agile, they're moving other services to the cloud, and they really want to get out of the business of managing data centers and expensive hardware, expensive software, and really focus on what they know how to do best, which is creating great solutions, great designs for their global customers. And we're moving to the second part of the presentation, which will cover Frame workflow, how the process really works on bringing your applications to the Frame, how we work together with Panzura, and then I'm going to hand it over to Justin, and he's going to run through the demo. And I also want to invite everyone to ask questions. Please open the chat window and ask questions there. We're going to go through, hopefully all of them, or we're going to try to answer most of them towards the end of this webinar. So feel free to ask questions, during the presentation. So how does the process of getting apps on Frame look like? And we really strive to get something that you can do in a matter of hours. So typically people get done on their day one, and they get into an environment that is already useful and usable, and then it takes probably a couple more days understanding how the architecture of other services look like and how we can connect to that. So starting from the left side, you all know what applications your teams are using, and typically those are Autodesk apps, maybe some Adobe apps, Bentley, SolidWorks apps. You figure out what you want to run. You already probably license that software, and you have typically network licenses for that. Then you pick where you need the service. So maybe you have a new project in Asia and you want to spin something in Singapore, or maybe you're a West Coast company wanting to expand to East Coast, and you need a service there, so you can run that from our East Coast data centers. So those are a couple of initial decisions that you got to make, and at that time, you fire up Frame system. It's very easy to install those applications and publish them to groups of virtual workstations. And then depending on how you already run your IT organizations, typically you will have your users either in some Active Directory, ADFS directly, or through Okta, Ping, Azure AD. So we have a very easy way for you to configure that SSO and tap into your existing directory of users. Frame has a built-in user management in case you don't want to use your existing AD, but most people want to do that. And then finally, connect to your files, because apps without files really don't mean much. And in this particular case, if you're already running Panzura in your physical locations through their appliances, this allows you, this gives you a real easy way to run another now virtual appliance in the cloud and attach your applications to it. And that's it. You're pretty much done. At that moment, your users can connect to virtual workstations running on Frame, tap into files on Panzura. You can authenticate them from your directory, and they'll be running in a location that you picked, and that location should be close to where your users are. Obviously, the lower the latency is, the better user experience is. And Justin, maybe you can talk through how Frame and Panzura work together in this globally locking file system configuration.
Sure. Yeah. So just I'll start another poll here just to find out how many people are using Panzura physical controllers today, which I think many of you are, but it looks actually like a pretty good mix. It's about half and half are using it or aren't using it. The way Panzura works today, just to provide some overview for those that aren't using it, is it's effectively an appliance that you put on your network in your offices. You'll put one potentially in New York and one in London in this case. And what's nice is as soon as you basically have the Panzura controller set, as a user adds files, say in the New York office, the metadata and file is backed up to the public cloud infrastructure. So you can back it up to any public cloud that you want to use. You can use, many customers are using Amazon S3 as their global source of truth for files. Others are using Azure. Some actually do use On-Prem servers. So there's a number of options of where you can use basically to back up those files. But most are using public cloud infrastructure just because of the elasticity that's available to you. Once a user potentially opens a file then in London, what happens is they grab a file lock, and basically that will let any other user that tries to open a file know that somebody is already using that file. So this helps you avoid things like change conflicts and trying to do conflict resolution across a distributed enterprise. So that's kind of how the physical Panzura controllers work. Now, a virtual Panzura controller works the same way, but you publish it up in AWS or in Azure. And those physical controllers can speak to that same network of Panzura controllers. So all of these are connected to each other through VPN secure tunnels so that they can deal with the data synchronization and file locking across multi-site. And the Frame environment really just acts as another office that you've set up. And so in this example, you can see you might have provisioned your virtual office on Frame to have 9 desktops, and 2 of them might be active, and delivering applications and that same data and files basically to these 2 users that can be working from mobile devices, or basically any device that runs a web browser. So it connects into that environment very cleanly and delivers the data securely to all these offices. So what we did, so let me get one thing, sorry. So what we did in order to demo this for you guys today is we set up 2 virtual controllers to simulate, a multi-site environment that a customer might have. On the East Coast, we have a virtual Panzura controller. We've got a domain controller that people are authenticating against to get access to their file share. And then we've got a VPN gateway, and that gateway is allowing the Panzura controllers to talk to one another and let them know, when users have files locked. On the Frame side of the environment, we've got another virtual private cloud that we connect into that environment. And in the Frame environment, we've got a license server running, all the licenses that users need to use, to get access to check out licenses. We're running VMs for every user that logs into the environment, so everybody's kind of securely isolated in the environment. And you can support multi-users instantaneously at this point. You just kind of scale up the maximum number of users that you want in a region, and suddenly you have more seats. And that's really it. So, so we set up this environment so we can do a quick demo for you guys. And so maybe what I can do here is we can switch over and I can share my screen.
Yes, I'll stop sharing here.
Okay, so here we go. Now I can share my screen. So at this point, hopefully, everybody can see my screen. What I have here is I have 2 windows already opened. I've got, in this one browser, I've got Frame running out of our West Coast environment. Up here you can see Frame Panzura West. My latency to this server is 14 milliseconds, so I'm sitting on the West Coast. You can see the performance is very good. I've already authenticated into the Panzura controller here on the West Coast. On the East Coast, you can see up here Frame Panzura East. We haven't authenticated into the controller yet, so when I click on the controller, what it's going to do is you get a normal NT challenge request to ask me to log in. I log in, and it's going to map that drive for me and show me the files that I have access to. So if I'm a user here and I open this test file on the East Coast, I'm now running Word in my browser, and I'm running actually this whole demo on a MacBook Air. I enable editing. I can come in here and say, we're editing on the, oops, actually before I do this, let me just quickly open this file here. So just to show you the file locking is working, I can see as I open the file that somebody's editing it. It's going to tell me I can receive notifications when the copy is available to me. The same, obviously, files open now in 2 regions. I can come in here and I can say, we're editing on the West Coast. And then I can come up here and save this file. When I save this file and then quit out of it on the West Coast, what's going to happen is it takes a second, and then basically the replication is pushed over to the East Coast, and basically the East Coast gets a notification that the file has been, edited, and and we want to get access to it for editing on the East Coast. You can see it's loading here. Effectively, it releases that lock for that user on the East Coast. And I don't know why Word is not responding.
Do we click on Enable Editing?
No, it looks like Word locked up here for a second. So just to kind of continue the demo, so what would have happened is you have access to that file now. But what's nice about Frame is, more than just getting access to your storage, it's truly a multi-application environment. So, in the same window, I can run any of the applications through this gear icon. I can run, PowerPoint, Photoshop. I can launch Revit. I can work kind of in a multi-application workspace, just as I would kind of expect to do at my desk. but it's all delivered to me through a web browser with no client receiver installed. So it's a very clean way to work across applications. Now, anybody that works with Revit knows it takes a while for that to launch, but all of these other applications, open instantaneously as you'd expect them to. And I, for some reason, have horked Microsoft Word, but anyways, you can see all of these other applications, work as you come to expect. So when a user logs into Frame, what they typically come in and where they start their session is in this unified workspace with all of the applications preloaded that they can run, off of their VM. And so users have the option to run any of these applications or to come up here and do things like, if you want to allow them to, they can switch the systems that they might be using to power the applications. We have 4 system types that users can choose from. Most design users are running on this Pro 16 system because it's got a dedicated NVIDIA Grid GPU. But if your design workflow requires you to do interactive rendering, you might want to temporarily switch into the Pro 64 system so you can use photoreal rendering tools. Or if you're just doing word processing or ERP types of applications, you can use these air systems, which are CPU only. So there's a range of systems to power the applications. And that's really all the user has to think about when they're working in the environment. An administrator, though, can come in to this dashboard. The way that we publish applications is through this sandbox interface. And the sandbox is effectively your gold master image that you're going to publish to your users. So as an admin, you come in, you power on the sandbox, you open a web browser, and you just download and install the application that you want your users to run in the cloud, just there in that sandbox. We've got an application that runs in the sandbox that recognizes when you install an application and asks you, would you like to onboard this application? If you say yes, we grab a bunch of launch parameters, an icon, and start building this image up here so that when you're ready, you can publish this gold master image to your production environment. And you can see basically all the applications that are published to production in this other tab. What's nice about Frame is it's not just an application remoting technology. There's also a lot of intelligence around orchestration, so turning infrastructure on and off, as Nicola talked about, to ensure efficient use of public cloud infrastructure. So in your production settings, you can choose things like the pool or system type that you want to power those applications by default. There's also these rules that you can set. So you can basically have minimums, a certain number of systems turn on, potentially at 8 in the morning, if you know all your users are going to be coming in the morning, and they want warm systems so that they get into applications right away. And then we can set things like a buffer so that if no matter what number you have on, there's always several extra systems running so that users get into warm systems. And then the maximum is obviously the maximum number of users you want to support in the environment. So there's a lot of configurability options. And then what's nice is once you have all that set up, and Nicola showed this better in his slide that I'm going to be able to show here because I haven't been using this infrastructure. But there's tools basically that provide the analytics and visualization of kind of that demand curve in your organization. So you can see the type of infrastructure you're using, the time of day it's being used, and kind of the regions that it's being used in, and effectively and efficiently manage your infrastructure.
So we're going to go back to all the questions at the end, but maybe this is a good time to talk about one parameter while Justin, you have things on your screen. I think you stopped sharing, but there was a question, what was a maximum session duration? And it's really a parameter for you. And on this system that we use for demos is set up to 90 minutes, but it's completely configurable by you, an administrator on the system. And typically in a production environment, that will be set up to something like 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours or 24 hours, or you can set it up to be unlimited. It's almost like a safeguard that prevents a runaway instance from running, at very, very long times when you don't expect to see that in a real production environment. Once you hit, in case you hit the total duration, maximum duration of the session, you will need it. amounts to basically shutting that system down. And one of the key concepts that we deploy on Frame to improve security is once you're done and once you return or release your virtual workstation, it basically goes back to its original state, waiting for the next user to come up. And that's the way we optimally use resources. So Frame offers you non-persistent desktops in a way. It's a concept is one user per one VM, but instead of getting a full desktop environment, which is something that you can configure, but what we found out is that administrators often prefer to really give users access to applications and parts of the system that they really need, and very few people really need to go and mess up with control panel, registry settings, and whatnot. So in a way, what you have in the Frame environment is a non-persistent desktop per user that's presented in a different way. And Justin's going to continue and show you how Revit, that is a Windows app, is running on his Mac using nothing else but a browser.
Yeah, and I'll share this quickly because I think somebody asked in the chat window, do we have hardware acceleration? Is hardware acceleration turned on? So yeah, in this environment, it's running on Pro 16 system, so it means it's got 4 CPU cores and a dedicated NVIDIA Grid GPU. So in the physical world, that's equivalent to a very high-end workstation. I think the Quadro equivalent would be a Quadro K5000 GPU, which is really kind of the high end of NVIDIA's graphics range. So really any user that works in the physical world is going to see performance here that's that meets or exceeds what they're typically used to working with. So it is a great interactive environment. And this environment I'm demoing this from is actually out of what we call a showcase account that's pre-licensed. After the call, if you guys want to basically talk one-on-one, what we can do is we can get some of your users to try some of these applications in our showcase accounts very quickly. It takes just a few seconds to add them, and then they can do kind of a quick application checkout. But every user that we put into the environment, if they've worked in VDI before, they're blown away actually by how interactive the performance is on Frame versus anything else they've tried to use in the past.
And we're going to talk more about what the next steps are. But as Justin said, we offer free evaluation on our existing, we call them showcase accounts. We have a number of those set up. I guess that most people here are not only in the US, but also on the West Coast. So, when we move on to next steps, you can simply get us a list of users from your team that would like to try this. And within minutes from us seeing that email, they'll get invites to the system that already has Revit, AutoCAD, and all these other applications pre-installed, and licensed, so they can see the same thing that Justin was just showing, how the application respond. They can evaluate latency and performance, and then the next step from there is to really get your own system of Frame where you can install your own application, connect to your own Panzura environment, and then also connect to your own licenses. And we have a program in place to support your pilot and evaluation that is typically something that we can get going in a matter of days, and it typically takes 30 to 60 days. And we'll be very happy to discuss that with you. So let me just run through the rest of the presentation, and we're going to cover a couple more things. So just to make sure we're on the same page on what are applications that can run on Frame, and simple answer is all Windows apps, and what are the most suitable Frame systems or Frame configurations to run certain apps. So if you're going to be running just a very simple application, client-server app, or something that is lightweight in terms of graphics, you're fine with using our systems that don't have dedicated GPUs. So that's similar to, let's say, traditional VDI without grid, without NVIDIA Grid. And you get a decent performance for applications that are not very intensive. The benefit of Frame is that at any time, end user can switch between one system to another system. It takes only about 2 minutes or less than 2 minutes. So maybe for the first half of the week, you need to do more design work, and then you'll be using Pro 16. And then second half of the week, you don't really need access to very powerful systems, and you can switch back to Air 8. But then Friday afternoon, you need to do some renderings, and then you can switch back to Pro 64. Most of design apps, as Justin mentioned, are in this sweet spot for Pro 16 gig. So it's 4 gig of GPU RAM, 1536 CUDA cores, considered a very high-end workstation. And again, some of the applications they may take advantage of. A Pro 64, which comes up with a total of 16 CPU cores and then 4 physical GPUs. It's a system that easily, in the physical world, would cost you $20,000–$25,000, and you can get it on Frame for a tiny fraction of that. We already talked about how Frame is optimized for many other applications that you use in your workflow. We specifically focused on AC Autodesk applications, AutoCAD and Revit. We heard in the past that's what most people base their workflows on. And late last year in December, we really achieved, and we were the first cloud platform to achieve Autodesk certification of AutoCAD and Revit in the cloud, where we certified the quality, performance, our ability to scale to a large number of people, and obviously met very strict Autodesk requirements for a service license agreement and response times. So Justin's going to now talk a little bit about Frame for Business, which is our plain vanilla solution and its pricing, and then how Frame Enterprise for AC fits AC use case.
Yeah, so what you'll find on our website is really our click-to-buy solutions for business. So Frame for Business is designed basically to allow companies to come in, bring their licenses, build that base image, and publish to a team of users. All of the systems are non-persistent systems. There was a question asking, can we maintain state between sessions? So if your users want to customize their toolbars, we can save user-specific configuration files between sessions, so their toolbars will remain the same. But ideally, you're trying to work in this this non-persistent environment, and the reason for that is because you get much better infrastructure reuse, and so it just creates better efficiency that way. But the programs, the way that they work is, in our click-to-buy options are you're typically paying a subscription fee, which gets you a number of prepackaged hours or prepackaged cloud credits. Those cloud credits get consumed based on a rate that's determined by the system that you're using, and so we'll talk about that in a second. But if I've got a team of 10 users and say I want to put them on the starter plan, or the standard plan, everybody would be paying $19.99 per user per month. With 10 users, there's 500 credits to share, per user. And so if I multiply 10 users times 500, it basically what we have is a family share data plan. And so if you have some users that are a lot more active than others, your active users will consume the credits that you've already bought through those subscriptions before you buy additional credits at an overage rate. But again, these are kind of our click-to-buy options in terms of pricing. As soon as you want to basically start customizing the disk image size to increase the images for a lot of these design applications, or adding VPN tunnels, or adding Panzura controllers, obviously there's some customization that needs to be done. I'd say just for budget guidance, typically for a graphics workstation, it's going to be about a starting price of about $50 per user per month, and that's going to include about 20 hours of use for a graphics workstation. And then your overage rate is going to be about $1 per hour, for those users that are running in this environment. But so typically what we need to do is obviously assess what your needs are, what your workflows look like, and we end up providing you kind of a custom quote basically to do the integration within your organization. In terms of infrastructure usage, as I said, so there's 4 system types. They consume cloud credits at different rates. The CPU-only systems, you can see, are much lower cost per hour. So they're roughly 15 to 30 cents an hour for CPU-only infrastructure. As soon as you get into graphics infrastructure, it's going to be about $1 an hour for users to run in that environment. So I think we provide this more so you guys have some idea in terms of understanding what budgets you would need and what the cost of running on-frame would look like. But ultimately, since some of the costs are driven by actual usage, I think typically it makes most sense to get some users on the environment, see what their real usage looks like in the virtualized world, and then basically build your cost projections around that. Because what we've seen is most people look at this and they assume they need to budget for 40 hours of use a week, but the reality is they're only in Revit potentially 20 to 30 hours a week because they're going to meetings, they're doing email, they're doing a lot of other stuff during the course of the week. So real usage is the best way to measure what your budget needs are going to look like.
And I think with that, we reached the end of our presentation and prepared remarks, and we can shift to questions.
Answering some of these questions. So I see a number of questions. So one question that came up was, does this work on dual monitors? And we get this question quite often. So there's a couple of different ways that people are using this today, and obviously working at things in the future. But one way that users can support effectively dual monitors is we have some users running on a 4K monitor as their local monitor, and effectively they stretch the browser across that whole resolution space. They can open multiple windows within that space and get basically higher resolution on that monitor than they would get on dual monitors.
But we also have currently it's in private beta. We do have. So as of today, production environment is not still optimized for dual monitors. You can stretch single monitor to very high resolution like 4K, as is just mentioned. But we have a private beta, and if you want to be one of the first people to try our dual monitor configuration, that will be available, I think, starting late July, early August. And we do plan to fully support additional new hardware that we expect to see in the cloud. That means in addition to Pro 16 and Pro 64 gigabyte options that we have right now with NVIDIA Grid that is based on Kepler architecture, we expect, and we're working very closely with both hardware vendors and then cloud providers to enable the next generation of GPUs that will give us many more options, and where the support for dual monitors and even multiple monitors going to a larger number than 2 will be even easier and built into the virtualization of the GPU itself. And just kind of for everyone, as a quick, let's say, information on where we are in like some very early days, first couple of years of GPU virtualization. Obviously, CPU virtualization has been around for 15 years. And we are now getting into, I'd say, more robust, mature phase where with next generation of GPU, we're going to be getting lots of these new features like dual monitors and many other options like Quadro certifications and everything else. So, Justin, you want to?
Yeah, and there was one other question that said, can you switch between systems, or how do you switch between systems? So in order to switch between systems, you do need to save your work, close your application, shut down the system. You switch systems, and then when you reboot or reconnect, basically it's going to launch your applications on that higher end system. So it's equivalent to doing a system reboot to switch between the infrastructure. But obviously, in the physical world, there's no equivalent. So it's
it definitely beats kind of running to like Best Buy to buy 3 other GPUs and more RAM and replacing it or ordering online, because you will only pay I'd say like additional money and additional credit for the duration of use of your high-powered instance. And then when you're done, you can simply switch back. So from the user interface, it amounts to switching to a new system and then waiting a couple of minutes and then restarting your applications.
Okay, so I'm going to ask, I guess, one last time if anybody has any questions, because it looks like we've answered all the questions that have come in so far. Maybe there's one more here.
Well, there was something.
This one's open.
Yes. Okay, in reference to Panzura controls, to lessen the burner cost for equipment for the pay-as-you-go pricing, is leasing an option? So I assume this is a question for Panzura.
Yeah, Jeff, are you on?
Yes, I am. The answer is yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So
I'd say work with your Panzura rep to understand what that pay-as-you-go pricing, what those pay-as-you-go pricing options look like.
So questions just came in. Do you need to pay for any bandwidth in and out your frame system? And the answer is no. We, like you, hate hidden charges. And what you see up front is what you pay for. So there is no additional payment for bandwidth. And that's all included in your per user subscription.
Okay, well, I think that's it. I think we've gotten through all the questions, but I'm sure there's a lot of questions still about how Frame might work in your environment. So obviously, we're here to answer any questions that you guys have.
You want to talk about kind of next steps and what is the best way for customers for people on the webinar to reach us?
Yeah. So what we'll do actually is we'll send out a link to the webinar.
Okay.
After we wrap up here. Obviously, you guys have your Panzura sales contacts. You'll have direct emails from us. Just reach out, and we can basically set up a scoping call with you to understand what your environment looks like. Most people do start by just frankly going on these showcase accounts we can put them on so they can try the applications, get quick user acceptance testing before they move into sort of a kind of a more involved pilot where they've got access to the Panzura controllers. But we are also building a showcase account that will give you guys access to applications and potentially Panzura controllers for a nominal charge for paying for the infrastructure that's spinning basically, that kind of short circuits the setup for being able to pilot. So it's when we talk, we can sort of walk you through all those options, and obviously there's we're looking forward to helping you guys migrate your users to the cloud as quickly as possible.
So with that, I want to thank you all for your time and looking forward to working with you in the near future. Thanks, everyone.